guys, and welcome back to another episode of Amesie's Corner. How are you all doing out there? So I got something kind of a little special to show you today. There aren't a lot of these on the road up here in New England. And that would be in this '05 Cadillac XLR. Now this is basically the Cadillac or the Corvette for the old man. This is Grandpa's Corvette. This is based on a, what is it, C5 Corvette chassis, the Y chassis. And it has a lot of similarities to that Corvette and a lot of differences. Probably the biggest difference, other than the styling. Now, one thing I want to touch on the styling. This seems to be loved or hated. Either you love the styling of this car or you hate it. And honestly, I'm going to say if you hate the styling of this car, you've probably never seen it in person. Just the angular shape of it, the design of it, it just it's one of those cars that just looks different in person than it does in print or in photographs or in video. And this here is a beautiful example, beautifully kept example of it. Not a mark on it, well, not a mark on it now. The reason it was here and under my care is it had a little damage. It got hit back here and did some damage back here, and we had to, repair the bumper, get a new tail light. Let me tell you right now, don't break Cadillac XLR taillights. They don't make these from the factory anymore. There are none of these available. We had to get one off of eBay, and it was literally thousands of dollars for that thing. So the biggest difference from a C5 Corvette is going to be the Corvette got what, the 6.0? And the Cadillac XLR got Cadillac's Northstar engine. Bear with me here. There we go. And there it is. Well, there it is under those covers. Was it 4.3 liter V8 Northstar, variable valve timing, puts out about 320 horsepower, right about 320, a little more, a little less, depending on fuel and conditions and all that. One thing about this car is it's the first Y body, I was told, to have a full aluminum folding roof on it. Now look at this thing. That's just the trunk area. Now, one thing you want to notice, you'd only want to put stuff in here if you're ever going to put the top down, because that's all where the convertible top hides. Maybe we'll run this through a system. Why don't we run this through in a second? Real cool. How cool is that, huh? As far as the interior, sorry about the bonging. It's got the remote keyless, and sometimes it's hard to get these things to not. Maybe I could, where's the door lock? There we go. That took care of it. You mother. Listen, I don't want to hear it. Shh. Whatever. So anyway, yeah, it's very Cadillac inside. A lot of the wood, the high quality wood inserts and stuff. Analog gauges, which, let's light them up, kind of surprised me. Accessory mode. No, it just wants me to start it up. Alright, I just wanted to turn the lights on, but apparently that's more complicated. Yeah, analog gauges, which I find kind of surprising with Cadillac's penchant for having digital stuff and the Corvette's history of having digital gauges. I find it kind of odd that it has actual analog gauges. Touchscreen navigation, CD player. Anybody have CDs anymore? I don't think I own a single CD. One thing about this car, it's a lot roomier than a Corvette. Somehow they managed to seem, I don't know if it's just me or what, but I feel a lot more encased inside of a Corvette. But this XLR, I have a little more elbow room, a little less like a roller skate. If you had to take a long drive, a lot of people don't like taking a Corvette on a real long drive because it feels like you're driving a roller skate. This thing, I feel comfortable like any other Cadillac of the age. Another thing about this car that I find interesting, and I've heard, I don't know if it's an automotive urban legend or something, urban myth, but this car is known to kill people just by getting in it. I've heard stories of people that got in these cars, left the ignition on, the battery went dead or had a bad battery in it, and they couldn't get out because this car uses push button entry and exit. you push the button and it's all electronic. So if you don't have electricity, that door ain't gonna open for you. And if you don't know it, there's an emergency release. It will save someone's life here. Some people don't know there is an emergency door opener right there with an actual cable and linkage mechanism. But I don't know, I heard stories of people in the C5 and I think the C6 Corvettes and these where an elderly man gets in it and can't get out, and then what a way to go. You think if I was gonna die in a car, I would take a moment and not have a lot to do and maybe, you know, go in the glove box and read the owner's manual. I guess it's important if it has it, but people, I guess, die in a Corvette, die in a XLR. Weird. Alright, let's take a little quick listen to the exhaust note. Not a bad sound to it. Not a bad little quiet rumble, but like I said, not a powerhouse. Alright, why don't we get this thing inside, we'll get it up on the lift and see just how similar to a C5 Corvette this thing is underneath. All in all, a neat car. Alright, we got this car up on the lift and let's go right underneath and take a look. Now, from under here, you're going to be hard pressed to know this isn't a Corvette under here. Paul's not here, dude. So yeah, you're going to notice, you're going to be hard pressed to notice that this is not a Cadillac, a Corvette rather, under here, except for, of course, it's got a Northstar engine on it, and it's leaking oil. That's typical of a Northstar motor, to be a little wet. This is actually probably the driest Northstar I've ever seen. It has to do with the oil pan gaskets on these things, and a lot of the gaskets have an aluminum gasket with a rubber sealing surface on it, and that sealing surface, that rubber gets hard over time, and then you have Northstar oil leaks, and yep, typical. So coolant system, the fans, they're tilted back just like a C5 Corvette. Looks like is that ABS module up there, rack and pinion, right? We would expect it to be. Double A-arm front suspension, and the hallmark of pretty much every Corvette is the fiber mono leaf springs. That is basically a fiberglass leaf spring, single leaf, just like the old school bow and arrows when you were a kid playing with those. And all of the weight of the car and suspension action hangs off of that mono leaf in the front. Looks like 2-piston calipers. Yep, 2-piston branded badged XLR calipers. There's the bell housing, and there's no transmission here, just like in a regular C5 Corvette. The transmission is way in the back. So whenever the engine's running in these, the flywheel's always spinning, the drive shaft is always spinning, even at idle. Seems to work all right. Never really had a problem with any of them in the Corvettes. Now, the suspension is a lot softer in this car than in a regular Corvette. You know, being a Cadillac, you would expect that. And another thing about this car, it is hella low. So it's not uncommon to see, you know, some damage from bottoming out. Even just bringing it up on the lift, I had to drive it up. Those are 2 pieces of 2x4 just to get the height, to get the lift pads under there and in the right spot. Yeah, see, this one's busted too, just bottoming out. I bet you can't get those. I bet you those being shaped to the outside, it's going to be the glass slipper effect on this car, just like the taillight. And just like the C5 Vet, all these stiffened areas are all like kind of a hybrid monocoque system on it. These are all glued together. You can actually see some of that glue. So the car is pretty much glued together. Really tight body on these, real tight chassis. Here's that transmission. Look at the size of this counterweight, this anti-vibration. This is a weight. These are weights. You'll see these on a lot of cars to cut the noise, vibration, and harshness down. And that is actually a heavy weight which takes vibrations, and if you look, it moves a little. Sorry about the light, because it's rubber mounted. Automatic transmission. I believe all of these XLRs are automatic. They might have done one special edition that was a manual, a very rare one, I believe. I think I read up on it, but more than likely every one you're going to find is pretty much going to be an automatic, what you would expect from Cadillac. Here's that rear mono beam, that rear mono leaf, same as the front, very similar, very effective, very long lasting. And I remember being young, saying, you know, hearing, oh, they make leaf springs. GM makes leaf springs out of fiberglass, and I'm like, you know, does that really work? But yeah, the stuff holds up very well. Single piston caliper in the rear, vented rear brakes. I would expect in a performance-oriented car. No XLR badging on the rears. Interesting. Kicking my wood around. And a true dual exhaust all the way back, really tucked up in there. Twin mufflers and the 4 signature pipes of the C5 chassis. All I think had that pretty much treatment. All right, guys, let's go to the best part of this review. Let's get this thing out on the road and see how it drives, because that's the important thing, isn't it? It's one thing how it looks, it's one thing how it's built underneath, but it's a total another thing how it makes you feel when you're in it. So let's get this thing out on the road.
She's gone.
I know where she's going.
Hey, you drive.
Is that?
That's my dad. Dad, we're getting married tonight, and you can't stop us. I love him. You always try to work with me.
Rachel, it's okay. Just take your mother's car. Cadillac XLR. Breakthrough.
So, first thing I notice about this car, it's got 27,000 miles, is it still smells very new. It still smells clean and still got a little bit of new car scent going on in it. Nice. Push button start. Oh, the seats all adjust themselves. Everything adjusts itself to the owner's preference, the driver's preference. I guess I'll live with that. So yeah, a lot of room in here. I feel a lot less confined in the XLR than in a Corvette. The driving position feels a little higher. Another thing about this car, it has an HUD, a HUD system, heads-up display. It shows, you know, pertinent information, speed and blinkers. Is probably programmable. It's definitely adjustable. So, first thing I notice about the car, I can really tell there's an engine in it. And one thing about Cadillacs, a lot of them, you really can't feel the motor, you know, vibrations, and it seems like Cadillac just wants you to have a quiet ride, enjoy the ride. I feel that this has a little bit of engine feedback in it, a little more than your typical Cadillac. A little bit of body roll, which is a lot of body roll for a C5 chassis, but I think that's just so like the thing doesn't have a harsh ride. Now, 320 horsepower, which is not a lot for the chassis, but still gets up to 45 pretty quick. Now 320, I don't know exact weight of this car, but it doesn't feel heavy. Definitely a lot of body roll for what the car really is underneath. But comfortable. Could drive a long distance in this car and not feel it. The seats are supportive, but not overly firm. But what you would expect for a Cadillac. Feels very Cadillac-y. I guess it makes sense being a Cadillac, but it's definitely more than just a rebadge. A lot of what GM likes to do is rebadge the chassis. This is kind of a super rebadge, but different enough from the Corvette that it really doesn't fit in that category, does it? Not a performance car, not really a sports car. Kind of like the the Mercedes SLR, which I believe was what they were kind of going for. Cadillac was going for with this car. So here we got my sharp 90-degree turn. Actually, it's probably more like a 100-degree turn. Oh, there goes the key. No complaints. I didn't hear any tire complaints on that. Seems like the body roll is only initial. When you really got to make a corner, that body roll kind of doesn't keep translating into the corner. Decent brakes. I wonder if the Corvette has better brakes. I don't know. Not a lot of info on vehicles out there about stuff like brakes. You know, they always concentrate on horsepower and torque numbers, but sometimes you just don't see 60 to 0 or 40 to 0 time. So gotta wait for the school bus. Everything is really grouped nicely. All the buttons are pretty much right where you would expect them to be. You know, one thing I like about this car and being a shared platform with the Corvette, it has all its own buttons and switches, which Cadillac seems to have a little different button and switch setup than a lot of the regular GM cars, and everything just feels like right out of a regular Cadillac. What the SLR, was that one of those Cadillac cars that had the same center stack here? Feels very much like one of those. Great visibility for a sports car. It's something a lot of the angular shaped cars like this that have a lot of you know, not curves but sharp edges and straight windows and all of that can have a lot of blind spots, but really good outward visibility in this car. Hear a little bit of squeaks from the seat, but there's a lot going on in these seats as far as airbags and sensors and motors and all of that. Let's get on it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that little rip in a regular C5 Corvette probably would have had my my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel, but it just gets up and goes. It's not a powerhouse. That Northstar engine definitely doesn't make the torque that the regular 6.0 that would be the what is this, LS2 would have gone in the C5, LS1, LS2 after that. I apologize. I should know more about Corvettes, but they just weren't something I really was around growing up. Got a red light coming. I'm gonna test these brakes out, see how good this thing will stop. A little squirmy, but good. No dive, no nose dive. You know, a lot of Cadillacs, when you kind of get on the brakes hard, it wants to lift the rear and nose dive the front, but stopped really well, really straight. Boy, it seems like whenever I'm in a car, I want to kind of zoom around in a little bit. I hit every red light and school bus and everything out there, huh? Oh well. There's an old codger in the truck behind me. Just looking at this thing, looking at, he's up, I see him moving his glasses, looking at the car. This is the Corvette all the old men want. Another school bus. Oh, I see all the kids' faces looking up over and pointing at the car. You know, that's the thing, the styling, they just don't make cars that really look like this anymore. comes the codger beside me. He has to take another look. No, I'm not going to be able to. Not going to be able to get on the S-turn in this car. The school bus in front taking the turn I am. Not a big deal. But this isn't really a performance vehicle. I have to classify this as a, oh, I want to say they call it a luxury sports car. Which I guess it is, but it almost seems more luxury than sport to me. But being a Cadillac, luxury over sport, I guess it's a good compromise. I guess all in all, this car is a good compromise of what GM had and what Cadillac had, and I'm glad they built it. Love it or hate it, like the styling or hate the styling, I think it's a cool car. I like it. Will I ever own one? Hell no. The glass slipper effect, I mean, repairing it and having to find that taillight for a couple grand. I mean, $2,000 for a used taillight. So keep that in mind on these limited production vehicles. You know, they call it the glass slipper effect. You break it, you know, so what might be a pretty minor accident can easily total a car like this, you know. But that being said, I'm glad I got to drive it. I'm glad GM made it. And it's going to go right there in my cool car list. Well, anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this drive around, walk around review of the Cadillac XLR. I definitely did. It's first thing in the morning. I got to get in there and get working for the day. But I don't know any better of a way to start the day than to go for a ride in some cool old car. Well, all right, guys, on that note, and until next time, keep it out of the cabbage.